And live. Guys, welcome back to Conversations with Jen, where I am out to cause bringing conversations about emotions and feelings and situations and real life stuff to anyone who needs it. So you can pick up the tips and the tricks and the nuggets that's going to get you to where you want to go and let you breathe and thrive in life in whatever direction you choose. That's going to bring you the joy that you're looking for. And I'm so grateful and excited to have Matt back with me this morning. To give you a little bit of background, Matt and I met, probably 12, 13 years ago
Right.
when I was in another market. And you guys, this man, he is just super down to earth. He's been in the HR field for well over 20 years and not your typical HR person in that I think that we always just have real conversations with an understanding of who people are, what situations are, and how we can do better for everyone that we encounter. He's also a foster parent and currently the VP of HR at Merrill Steel. Did I miss anything, Matt?
Nope, I think you covered it well. Good morning.
Awesome. Good morning. And I'm so excited at the topic that Matt suggested for today, and that is caring leadership and the concept of caring leadership, who we are for our employees, who we are for each other, who we are for ourselves as we move forward in organizations.
It's an awesome topic.
Yeah, it is. Can you give us highlights of your perception of caring leadership?
Yeah, my concepts are borrowed from Lou Holtz, and 20 years ago I had the chance to hear Lou Holtz, and he gives three very basic leadership concepts, advice. He says that every person asks three questions of you as a leader. Okay, and so this is borrowed from him. Lou Holtz was a coach for Notre Dame, but Lou Holtz is one of the best college football coaches in history. And his game was to take losing programs and turn them into winning programs. So he inherited programs that were losing almost every game, and then he would make them national champs in some cases. So that's his thing. And so that inspires me because I'm a redeemer. I like to take something that's broken and fix it. And maybe it's helping a person or helping a company or whatever it may be, or just making it better. It doesn't have to be broken. But he asked three questions. He says, every person asks three questions of you. He says, do I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? And do you care about me? And the topic today, I think, is, right, it seems to me like leaders are good at the first two. Well, trust we could talk about as well. But they're good at driving performance and but when it especially comes down to this mushy word like care, and I'm not going to get too mushy with you this morning, I'm talking about simple, straightforward, real caring. That I think we could talk about why. Maybe it's they think they'll cross a professional line, and we've got to keep this professional line. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's true a little bit, but I just think it's maybe way too extreme. And I don't think we're real enough as leaders. I think we need to be vulnerable, which I can say that I haven't always been, and I'm not sure I'm great at it today, but at least I can say that I feel a lot more comfortable sharing a weakness or sharing when I make a mistake, that kind of vulnerability, and then opening up the chance for caring and for truly caring. And realizing the importance of that, how that connects with coaching and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
So absolutely critical. And if you're missing it, 2/3 isn't enough. If you have the other 2/3, it's not enough.
Yeah. I like how you said not the soft, mushy type of caring. As I have it, caring to me is just understanding the human nature behind. Okay, I'm going to back up for a minute. So when I was growing up, and I've been working since paper routes back when I was 11 years old. And the way I had it and what I was raised as in early manager roles is you always keep business and personal separate. Personal and business is very, very separate is what I was always raised with and raised my manager mentality with. And I really switched for me, when I switched from manager to leader and really just started taking a step back and saying, actually, there's a lot of personal that comes into the business world, in my opinion, and understanding on the people level of, wow, this person just went through this really hard thing in life, and how can we support them in a way that honors them but does not impede upon the work environment? That to me is caring.
Right.
Same thing, you know, with financials, or they're about to lose their house, they're about to get kicked out of their apartment, or whatever that is. That's how I kind of define your perspective of not the soft and mushy, but actually the caring of understanding that this person is going through life stuff, and how can we help them maybe with some simple steps or some tools and resources, some go-tos, suggestions perhaps, to keep them on track so that they know that we care.
Yeah, I think there's two parts. You know, there's truly caring. So first, you actually have to really care, which I hope most do. I
Yeah.
think most do. And then there's the part about showing it, and that's through action. But just to clarify, you know, when I say mushy, it's just, I don't mean to say that it's not okay to, you know, be intimate in terms of getting to know the person and digging in. What I mean by mushy is, like, I guess I would think of a random example of like what colleges do today, and they something like safe places, or I forget what they call it. You know, when your feelings are hurt just a little bit, go in this little corner. And, you know, I think sometimes we can go too far, and maybe there's good in that. I don't mean to, I just randomly thought of that. Right. But like, you know, they talk about 18-year-olds of the past were on boats storming the beach. And then, you know, so I think you can take it too far. If you baby your kids or you baby your employees, pretty soon you've created little babies, and they're never going to be able to function on their own. And so that's what I mean by mushy.
Yeah.
But this line of, you know, this interesting line of professionalism, and I used to be there, so it's okay, and I'm always open to talking about it. But let me, you know, I just thought of this example. Literally this week, I was talking with another colleague, and I said, let's say a coworker or colleague, let's say it's even your boss, passes away, right? Someday that's going to happen. 10 out of 10 people die by statistics. So, and you go to that person's funeral, what would you say, right? Would you, if that, let's say, especially if you did have a good relationship with that person, or that, you know, would you say, well, you know, they're not my friend. That person's not my friend because, see, I worked with them, and the two never can happen together. And I would say, see, right. So it's just a neat example. Like, I hope you would say, right, if someone came to my funeral, and hopefully it's not soon, but if somebody came to my funeral, and right, and I was even their boss, the old traditional word boss, right?
Yeah.
I hope they would say Matt was my friend.
Yeah.
I also worked with Matt, right? But see the difference? So I just think, I think most people wouldn't feel comfortable saying that. They're like, no, that's my boss. That's not my friend. You know, there's no, those two are mutually exclusive. And I would just say false.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Matt. I'm going to come back to that, and I just want to acknowledge Dorothy Christie. Thank you for joining us. Dorothy, you have an interesting topic here. That would be brilliant if management would get on board with that thinking. I think that this is interesting in that I do think that companies are becoming more and more aware of the importance of understanding and the importance of care in the workplace, but I think it's time. What is your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. Whether companies come on board, you mean?
Right.
Whether, yeah, I think it starts at the top,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that has to be made okay. And that doesn't remove that doesn't remove accountability and business results or any of those things. It doesn't remove that. It just says that these things are intertwined,
Yeah.
and that we can show caring, and there's lots of ways companies can show caring. So if it starts at the top, you know, maybe you have a good achievement in the business. Maybe you have pizza. You order pizza, and that's really simple. Maybe it's more individual. Sometimes individual recognition can go bad. If a whole team contributed and you recognize one person, everybody then resents that person. So you have to be careful. But in general, Lou Holtz gave lots of examples, and it doesn't always have to be big bonuses or anything like that. Like you know, you can't pay college athletes, so he'd put $100,000 candy bar in their locker. He'd just put it in there,
Nice.
and they'd come back, and he says, the NCAA won't allow me to do anything more, but I just want to know I appreciate you. Right. So you think about it, that's just it's a candy bar, but that person probably remembers that the rest of his life in that case. So it doesn't have to be high value or, what, right? It's just more about the personal connection.
Right. I think that coming back to Dorothy's comment, the way I have it coupled with what you had mentioned is it again comes down to just taking a step back to understand the person in my book,
Right.
and understand what that person wants and desire. And that can be, to me, it's simple steps. It could be a one page, what do they like? What do they not like? What are their triggers? What aligns them? What engages them? And as we know that, I really have it that it actually helps performance. It actually engages them differently in the workplace in a lot of cases. It actually knows that you have their back, and inadvertently they have yours, which isn't just the reason to care, but I mean, it also helps performance in the workplace as well, in my opinion.
My personal opinion, it's the only way to ever be great at anything. If the people that you lead really think that you don't care about them, I think you're in great trouble. I
Yeah.
think they're going. I think they're going through the motions. I think there's no inspiration in their work. And it, like you said, it does involve getting to know. This is a daily thing, so it's as the person's comfortable. There's rare people that are guarded, and you got to you can't be intrusive. But it's, do they have, what's their family like? What are their hobbies like? What do they enjoy? And the interesting thing, so is that relationship, and I joke and I call that the mushy R word, even in business, because it's hard to connect that with money sometimes. But I think it's highly connected with profitability of a business and ultimately success of a business, right?
Yeah.
Think about this. You talk about coaching a lot, Jen, and we all coach, but if you want to be great, there's a lot of coaching behind that.
Yep.
Lou Holtz talks about changing the mindsets of his teams, that when they're losing, their attitudes are sour, da da da. They have the wrong mindsets. But who do you listen to coaching from? Someone that you know cares about you, or someone that you don't think cares about you, right? So if someone's coaching me and I don't think they care about me a bit, I think they've got their own goals and they're just trying to make some more money or whatever it may be.
Yep.
I don't trust, when they get into trust, I don't trust that person. But I think maybe they're trying to hurt me. Like,
Yep.
they're just, right. But if I trust, or I have a strong relationship and I know that person cares about me, then they're like, oh, they told me this. That's kind of hard to hear, but maybe, right. Maybe there's something to that. I know they're not hurting me is the biggest point. I know they're not trying to hurt me. Now I'm actually going to look inward. I'm comfortable. I'm not threatened. My wall didn't, right. I was called, the wall goes up.
Yeah.
First sentence, the wall goes up. I didn't hear anything after that.
Yeah.
Right. The wall never went up. And I'll tell you a humorous story. So about 10 years ago, a director who I greatly respected, he was a wrestler from Iowa, and wrestled in college. So, and I didn't wrestle, I was a basketball and baseball player, but he's the only guy who could ever beat me in pool, by the way. So anyway, I respected him over and over, every game. But he shut the door one time. He said, Matt, can I share something with you? And I'm like, sure. I'm in my head. I'm like, why'd you shut the door? What's going on here? But I trusted him and I knew that he cared about me.
Mm.
And he goes, Matt, you're too nice. And so I tell this story today. I should look him up, but I'm sure he had no idea the impact that had on me. And he was watching me, and I was I was trying to please everybody, and I was just talking and talking and talking. I was trying to please everybody, but I wasn't ever taking kind of enough stance.
Yeah.
And as a leader, sometimes you just got to say, all right, team, here's the path. Here's where we're going.
Yeah.
But I stirred about that for 2 or 3 weeks. I stirred about that, but I knew he cared about me. And in my head, I'm like, nice. What are you talking about? Nice is a great thing. My mom taught me to be nice.
Mm.
Da, 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 right? Like, how in the world can that be a bad thing if I'm too nice? And I came up with conclusions about leadership, of being careful not to try to please everyone and not to be, right, take it too much to the extreme and so forth. And so, but I heard him. I wasn't threatened. I didn't think he was going to fire me, on and on. And eventually that made me a better leader. So because I knew that he cared about me.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. And I think that in that has a lot of important nuggets for people. One of the things, and I've been in staffing for 15 years and interviewing people, talking to people. The one thing I've heard consistently, and I'm a person who, if I see something that I have it that they could have knowledge on to potentially do differently, that to me is caring, but it's also coaching. That person may not know their work history is impacting something. And if they just have someone tell them something in a kind way, I can tell you hundreds of times I've had over and over again people say, thanks, no one's ever told me that before. That to
Right.
me is care. That's telling that person the hard that what people may have it as hard thing, but if you tell them that, then they have that chance to be better. And
Right.
it's little things like that that I think sometimes get missed for so many reasons. I think sometimes people just have a hard time giving feedback because they don't know how it's going to be received. And another interesting point in what you mentioned about being nice, I had one of my business partners said a while back, she said, there's a difference between nice and kind. And we can give feedback in a way that's kind, but that is also like telling that employee, here's what you need to do if you're going to be successful and find the right job. You can say it in a kind way, but also giving that feedback that may, for some people, be uncomfortable, which in turn is going to escalate that person's performance and abilities, and know that that we care and that we have their
Right.
back.
Right. Yeah, it goes back to that mushy R word, where if I have a strong relationship with the person, right, versus say about the comment earlier, right, the management, the vision of management. Let's say I don't interact with my team very much or someone on my team, and then when maybe I even have good intent. Maybe I just am right going about it in the old school formal way, so I don't talk with you much. But then I got something to share. Maybe my intent is even good. What do? I call you in. I shut the door. Now your wall is like 3 seconds away from going up, right? And you're like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you're sitting across from the desk, and you don't talk often, so it's
Mm.
not comfortable. And then you try to coach, and the person's wall goes up in the first sentence, and they don't hear a word you say after that. The alternative is, what if you talked every day or almost every day? And what if that person knew you cared about them? And what if it came up in casual conversation? You don't have to shut the door. Or maybe it's leaning against a railing somewhere out, right? And maybe it's at lunch, or if it's private, be private, right? But the wall never goes up, and so the person can hear you, and now you have a chance. I think we're so stuck in the ways that have been done for so long. We've got to question what's happening in front of us. And we say, well, I did my job today. That's their fault. They didn't hear it. When I shut the door and I don't have a relationship with them, and I sat across from the desk and I gave my coaching and I documented it well and I sent it to HR. Yeah, that all sounds great, but you actually failed in what you were trying to do. You're trying to get that person to change or improve.
Yep.
And they got threatened and they didn't hear you.
Right.
So I think we call that success when we're driving home. I don't think it is.
No, agreed. And I think that it leads to other things. I mean, it leads to that dichotomy between the employee feeling like their boss doesn't listen or that they're heard, and the employer feeling like the employee is just being negligent, right?
Right.
And it's just different perspectives because of the way it's communicated and how it's approached. So what, from your perspective, what tips do you have for employers or leaders watching to start on that simple path of starting to understand their employees?
I think maybe, again, usually the motives are good, right? I mean, it goes back to that perception of professionalism, right? Now, should you hang out and drink beer with one member of your team all the time while the other five watch and say that probably is crossing a line, right? You're like, it's creating a bad impression, like you're favoring one person. So
Yeah.
there are lines there. I'm not implying to wash away the line.
Of course.
But I think we have a fear of this professionalism. We don't open up. We don't get to know people. We don't, right? There's this old saying, I always kind of laugh at it. Check your personal life, or check your feelings at the door. Like, that's impossible.
Yep. Agreed.
Right? Agreed. You're asking me to be a robot today?
Right.
you're asking me to fake it really well is what you're asking me to do. And
Yeah.
all those things erase our chance to actually connect with people. And, one of my madisms is the dinner table discussion, right? You could talk about new hires, or what are your people, what is your team saying when they go home for their dinner table discussion, right? That's the real story, whether it's their spouse or whomever they're having dinner with. Yeah, my boss shut the door. Am I calling you you're the boss, right? Maybe they would call you by your name.
Right.
But if you have those normal discussions, regular, ongoing, they're probably like, it was a good day at work. That wasn't anything different. Versus my boss shut the door today and he said this. See the very big difference between whether there's caring, a relationship, or whether there's traditional good intent but very ineffective kind of approach.
Yeah. I think it even is the simple steps, and I think you alluded to it earlier, is walking the floor is the best way I can describe it. Just being present to your employees and knowing them by name and acknowledging them when you see them. Those small steps, I think, go really far with people. And then they feel seen and they feel heard just in the simple acknowledgement of walking by and acknowledging who they are as a person.
Yeah, that would get into the showing you care part, right? So my minor was management. I think there's lots of names for this, but they called it MBWO, management by walking around. But there's definitely an aspect of caring. Now, again, it goes back to social skill and truly caring, right? But if you're walking by someone and you get to know them, how are the kids doing? Haven't seen you in a while. Nice. I see your son was in the paper for the football game the other night. Right? Takes about 10 seconds, and those things are absolutely critical when you take off your traditional management hat and you actually start to lead. There's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so one of the things that I had wanted to address is I really, especially looking at some of the statistics of where we're at right now with lack of engagement, and it's unfortunate that mental illness in America is growing. And I really have it that this is a key piece that employers and leaders can impact with their employees. How do you think, from your perspective, how does that all play a role within the employee-employer situation?
I think a lot of employers, maybe it's starting to break now. We were a little different. We were an essential workplace and we stayed at work. And for the most part, there were a couple stints where we had some work from homes where we felt like there was a chance and so forth. But I think that seclusion, we're social beings, and some are introverts and some are extroverts, but we're social beings. And when you cut off that sociability, or those social paths, I think you're headed for trouble. I think there's something about, like, what do they do in the movies? And I don't know if they still do this in prisons, right? If you were bad, they put you in solitary confinement. That's like the worst punishment there is, right? And the person, and the funny movies, but the person comes out after one day. Shawshank Redemption had it. I think there's many movies, probably real life, but they come out and they're like humbled, or they're like, that was horrible. They're in the dark, they're in this room, and they have all this time to think and nothing to do. So if you just think about that concept, not that working from home is anything like that, but it is seclusion. It is seclusion, and so even virtual meetings, which aren't the same, but they're about as close as you can get. They're better than a phone call. I think is critical. I think just the human aspect of knowing someone cares about you and getting engaged in life. Right? I mean, work is a good thing as long as it's not overdone, just like moderation. But work is a good thing, and interacting is a good thing, and helping others is a good thing. And having challenges in front of you is a good thing. And if those things are taken away, then bad stuff happens. And I think that's probably one explanation of why we're seeing that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all of that. It's that community piece. And sometimes I don't know as though we realize how important, even if we don't necessarily have the one-on-one interaction all the time, just having people around us is supportive. I mean, it's proven through tribes and just history. A couple notes that I quick made as I think about that question. One of the things that I've recognized through the years is just understanding who that person is, and the simple art that not everyone responds the same to the same approach. And I think just understanding that there are some people who are more introverted or more extroverted, not that either one is more good or more bad, they're just different, right? And there are some people who take a different approach that they really need. I love the love languages and understanding what drives people with, if it's time, is it gifts, is it affirmation, and even understanding those little nuances to know, well, this person doesn't need words, they just need maybe a free cup of coffee or something.
Right.
And to me, those things really seal it as it relates to both engagement. But I look at, as someone who for decades had massive internal anxiety and hid it very well, very effectively, I think, in the workplace. Those simple acts of understanding how to approach, like I look back now 8 years later and have anxious moments now, but thankfully not massive anxiety. And I look to what I would have needed in that moment, and just taking the step back to actually listen, understand, receive, and acknowledge, and meet me where I was at would have had the biggest impact to say, oh, maybe I could receive this differently, if that makes sense. But also, I think duties are sometimes important in that as well. You know, often I think that we, as I look to the engagement piece, there's some things we can't change about a job, but there's other things that we can add in. And one of the statistics I read was about boredom in the workplace. And sometimes someone just needs something that's going to light their fire within their duties and what they're doing every day.
I think a good challenge is always fun as long as it's attainable, and I think that's underrated as well. You spoke about the the kind of the self-awareness, others awareness aspect. You know, there's exercises in the workplace if done well, the Myers-Briggs, the DISC. They measure different things. I think there's a color one.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, I was talking to someone a few weeks ago, and I said, "At what age do you think you begin to know yourself?"
Yeah.
And you know what the answer we came up with? And I asked another person. The answer was in your 40s.
Yeah, I believe that.
You think about that, and like, ask a 20 or 30-year-old, they're like, what are you talking about? I know myself. I would say my answer is in my 40s. But those measures can be good because first I look at myself and I say, oh, here's my traits. I tend to do 1, 2, 3, or I gravitate my natural ways here, and I can still do this. I can still, right, do what it says I maybe can't do as well.
Yeah.
But I have natural. And then the second
Matt, we may have lost you for a minute.
part is
Matt, I think that your Wi-Fi might be a little bit fuzzy right now. So going back to, I'll jump in, guys. So going back to the point that I think Matt was on is just gaining that understanding through different approaches of who that person is. And there's a lot of different surveys and tools out there that we can use as well. And a couple comments. Good morning, Russ. It's great to see you. And yeah, Dorothy, you're exactly right. It has a lot of meaning when we know that we're appreciated. So I wish we would have Matt to wrap up the show. We're right at about a half hour. And guys, it's been a great conversation. So caring leadership, we're talking about understanding of people, understanding different communication styles and how different people work so that we can really meet them where they're at and escalate not only that engagement piece, but help to minimize the anxiousness people feel and the loneliness people feel at times, especially in the workplace, just by simple steps and simple understandings. So It's been a great day. It's been a great morning. Thank you to everyone who has joined us. And we will look forward to seeing you right back here. I think we're back on Tuesday. So have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.